Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today I wanted to share with you the decks that I work with on the dark moon or the new moon, and the deity or goddess that I also work with around this same time. So before we jump into the decks, I have set up my table as I kind of normally would when I'm working with the dark moon. Some of the things that I like to incorporate in this work or in this magical space is my triple goddess statue. I have a large piece of amethyst here. I have my little amethyst skull. This is Poe, and he always comes and hangs out with me when I work with the dark moon because my primary deity for dark moon work is Hekate. I have Hekate's wheel here along with the moon and her key. And those are just kind of some of my magical items that I use that I like to incorporate to bring intention to my practice. And I have my Hekate Journal. Let's jump into all of this. Can you see that? There is so many, I can't even fit them all in screen. So to start off, let's take a look at the decks that I use for my dark or new moon readings. The primary deck that I use is my Dark Goddess Tarot. Now this is the indie edition, but as you can see here, I do have the mass market book as well, so I do have both editions. The indie edition, however, is my preferred deck for workings, and it is the primary deck that I read with. And so I just like I like the setup on this deck a lot better than the new mass market edition. And quite honestly, I've used this deck for so long now in my dark moon readings that this deck just feels very attuned to that energy for me. It is this particular deck, right? Not just necessarily the Dark Goddess Tarot. I don't feel that I could use the mass market edition and it would have the same feel, right? If that makes sense. This edition definitely, this particular deck of cards feels like it has been imbued with that energy through the work that I've done with it over the last year, using it for the primary focus for my primary reading for the dark moon every month. And so this is definitely one of my favorites. It is one of my most sort of magical decks, I think, where that's concerned. And for me, it definitely feels attuned to the dark moon energy. The dark goddesses are attuned to the dark or new moon. And again, this one just feels very much a part of that practice, and probably because I use it pretty much primarily for this. This deck is dedicated to that particular practice, to my dark or new moon readings. And it rarely comes out for anything else. And so it does feel like it is very much a part of that practice for me. But I just love the imagery. I love the artwork. And I really enjoy using it as a part of my dark moon practice. It does serve as the foundation for my readings. I do really like having the new mass market guidebook to work with because it does make the process a little bit easier. I was using I purchased the PDF version of this from Ellen Lorenzi Prince's website when I bought this deck. And so I was using it digitally as a PDF, and having it in this printed form has just made it so much easier and totally worth it to buy the mass market deck just to get this guidebook, in my opinion. So when it comes to expanding upon that message, after I've pulled a dark goddess to be my central point, I generally use one or more tarot decks to expand upon that message. So one of the decks that I like to use to expand upon those readings or to really dive deep into my dark moon work is the Jonasa Jaus tarot. I do believe that's how it's pronounced. I believe I read somewhere that the J is actually pronounced as a Y, but if I've mispronounced that, I do apologize. I don't know if this deck is currently in print at the moment, but I do believe that I saw the creator had plans to release some more at some point during 2021. I'm unsure when that is, but I will definitely check for you. I absolutely love this deck. It is full of just gorgeous artwork. I love the limited color palette. And what I really love is the more Pip style or almost Marseille style illustrations that we have. I mean, look how beautiful here. Some of the figures are a bit young, but I just adore the illustrations. They are very much Pip style. We definitely have some kind of younger figures in there, but then the numbered minors in this deck are really just everything for me. It also has my absolute favorite Emperor card ever. I love the long, skinny nature of this deck. It makes it kind of fun to work with. It's actually really easy to work with. It shuffles beautifully, it works well, it reads fantastically. It's a little bit more modern, you can see in its design, and that's not usually my thing, but I absolutely love the pippy nature of it. I love the restrained color palette. It's just beautiful, and I love the readings that I get with it. This is definitely one of my sort of more personal decks. I guess all of my decks are personal because I don't read for other people, but this one feels like more along the lines of what I would call a sort of soul deck. This one would be more of the kind of Marseille soul deck or Pip style soul deck for me, whereas like my Llewellyn would kind of be my more Rider-Waite-Smith type pull of soul deck. But this is definitely one of my favorites. I definitely consider it to be really close to my heart, and I absolutely love working with it. And it's just beautiful for dark moon work. A lot of the cards have that sort of dark background, as we can see here, that really just brings that energy in. And it is so gorgeous. And I just want to see here if I can find that Emperor, because I think he's the most amazing Emperor ever. Is that him? Nope. And it just, there's so many cards in this deck that are like amazing, but look at that Emperor. That, I think, that's my favorite Emperor ever. I just love that it's like the skeleton, like he's been there forever, he's not going anywhere, and he's been sort of overtaken by all this vegetation. He's become a part of the Empress's world, and I just think that's just stunning. Favorite Emperor ever. So that is one of the decks that I definitely enjoy using during the dark moon. I do use this deck for other readings as well, but it definitely does tend to come out more for dark moon readings than probably any other time, because it just has an amazing energy for that. So another deck that I use often, which is actually by the same creator, is the Stunning Tarot. This one I actually got in a trade, and because I kind of missed the boat on it. I don't know, I wasn't paying attention, I guess, and I just forgot to, I forgot to order it. And then it went out of stock. And then I was able to trade for it, and I'm just so glad that I did, because it just has this really amazing energy to it. And again, I love using it for my dark moon readings. It has that very limited color palette, the very restrained color palette again, but I feel like it's a little bit sassier, a little bit edgier than the than this creator's first deck that we just saw. It has a bit more of an edge to it, and it really doesn't pull any punches, and it really doesn't mess around. But it's definitely a deck that I enjoy reading with. I love the color palette being so restrained. I love the imagery. This one I feel is a little bit more in line with the Rider-Waite-Smith, whereas her other deck feels a little bit more like a Marseille. This feels a little bit more in line with the Rider-Waite-Smith. So it's kind of neat to have both of those traditions represented. I don't know if that was the intention or if that's just the way that I see it, but again, it's another very modern deck, but it works beautifully for my dark moon readings. So another deck that I really enjoy working with during the dark moon is the Black Lily Tarot. This is one of my favorite little decks. I absolutely adore this deck. This little deck is so sassy. It shoots straight from the hip. It does not pull any punches, and it definitely tells me exactly what it is that I need to hear. I love the illustrations in this deck. I love the energy that it has. Again, like I said, it's very sassy. It's very, again, very modern. It does have a little bit of a kind of edgier take, I think, on the Rider-Waite-Smith in some aspects, but in others we get a little bit more of a Pip style. So it's an interesting blend. Look at this tower. So really different kind of take on a lot of the cards. Like I said, this deck is just full of sass, full of piss and vinegar, as we say, and I just love it. It always is the deck that I go to when I need the truth, right? I need the straight up, no nonsense, no fluff truth. Just the truth, nothing but the truth, and this deck gives it to me with a little bit of sass on the side. But it's a deck that works really beautifully for dark moon readings. Again, you'll notice there's kind of a theme here. I kind of go with decks that have a little bit more of a restrained color palette, decks that have they're a little bit darker in tone. They often have black backgrounds, and I really like that energy for the dark moon work that I do. So that's another really beautiful deck that I absolutely love to work with. It's a great little pocket-sized deck, but it packs a punch, and like I said, it is full of sass, and I really enjoy working with this one. So another deck that I have used a lot for dark moon readings, and really just a lot of readings in general, is the Mary L. Now this is a deck, this is the first edition. I do have a trimmed copy that I did some pretty serious modifications on, but I recently traded for an intact copy of the Mary L first edition. I was not fond of the changes that were made in the second edition. I did get it, and then I ended up passing it on because they changed some of the pivotal cards for me, this one in particular. I spent a lot of time working with this card and getting to know it, coming to terms with it, understanding it, and then to have it removed from the deck in the second edition, just, I'll be honest, felt wrong. So I wanted to get another full intact with the big borders and the gold gilding and everything, to have a copy of it just in its kind of original form. I do use my trimmed copy, which is taken down to just the artwork. I do use that a lot of times as well. That was my primary deck for getting to know the Mary L, and I think I've mentioned before, I specifically took the titles and the borders off. I took the borders off because they were huge and it's gilded, which I don't like, but I took the titles off my first copy on purpose so that I would have to use the guidebook, and I would have to really get to know each of these cards and work with them really intentionally, and not just kind of fall back on just what the picture's telling me. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and I do that with a lot of decks, but for this particular deck, I wanted to understand what was going on in the artwork. I wanted to understand the structure. This is very much a blended system deck, so there's a lot of Thoth influence, there's a lot of Rider-Waite-Smith influence, and so I really wanted to understand what was going on and why each art piece was chosen. And so I did that so that I would have to work with the guidebook. And it was a really wonderful experience. But now I enjoy having a full-size copy complete with the titles on it as well, and even these borders and the gold gilding. Even though it's a pain to work with in terms of its size, I absolutely love reading with this deck. And it is one that I have used a lot for dark moon readings in the past. This last year I was using more of some of my newer decks, but this one is definitely an old favorite, and it works really beautifully for that dark moon energy. Again, I use this deck for a lot of sort of magical work as well, but it's definitely one that comes out quite often during the dark moon, and in the winter months as well, because it definitely has that kind of an energy to me, where it's kind of like asking you to go deep within that void consciousness and to really sink into the unknown. And I think it just works beautifully for that. So that is definitely an old favorite and a kind of tried and true deck that I used for dark moon work. This is the first edition, which is no longer available, but you can get the second edition still. So next I have a couple of honorable mention decks that I want to talk about. This is the Goddess Knowledge cards with artwork by Susan Seddon-Boulay. And prior to getting the Dark Goddess Tarot, this was the main goddess deck that I used during the dark moon phases. And it's just, the artwork is just, oh, so beautiful, so stunning. I do like that this deck actually has text on the back, so you don't actually need a guidebook. That was really handy. And so I could just flip it over and see which goddess was being represented. Here's Inanna. And, you know, it tells a little bit about each one. And the artwork in this deck is just so fantastic. I do still pull this deck out and I do still use it on occasion, but my dark goddess kind of took the place of it, and this one had, whereas this one had served as that focal point. Over the last year I've been using the dark goddess primarily as my focal point deck, but this one definitely served as that purpose for a very long time, and will definitely probably come back out at some point again, because I just absolutely love the artwork. This is also a deck that sometimes I just pull this deck out and shuffle it and look through the cards and just find a dark goddess to kind of connect with in that moment. It's a very wonderful meditative deck as well. So I really enjoy working with it in many different aspects. So I've made a little space for us because I thought it would be fun to just kind of show you some of these card combos that I like to use for the dark moon, particularly when I start mixing decks together. So there's a couple of different combinations that I thought it would be fun to check out. So one of the first combinations that I really enjoy using for my dark moon readings is the Dark Goddess Tarot with the Stunning Tarot. There is just something really special about this combination of cards. The messages that they draw out from each other are just amazing. And the way the colors, it picks up on the colors. So in this particular instance, what I might focus on is that yellow, and where is the yellow here, and where is the yellow in her dress. And I might see if there are any messages or insights to be gained from following the colors. Because both decks have a color palette that is very heavily in the primary colors, you can almost always find those correlating colors within these two cards. So here we have the red in the Nine of Swords, the red in the background, and we have the yellow in her little carriage or chariot here. So sometimes that's really interesting to focus in on where those colors are pulling your eye. The Stunning Tarot is kind of a sharp tongued deck in my experience working with it. In comparison to the Stunning Tarot, the Dark Goddess does feel a little bit softer. It's a little bit kinder in its messages, where the Stunning Tarot really kind of gets to the heart of the matter and right away. It doesn't pull any punches, and it really does just kind of give it to you straight without a lot of fluff. And so it's really interesting how it kind of pulls that energy out of the Dark Goddess Tarot as well. I found that really fascinating. But these two decks are kind of my favorites to work together. I really love the way that they kind of pull the energy out of each other. So another deck combination that I really enjoy for my dark moon readings is the Jaus Tarot and the Black Lily Tarot. Now these two decks really look beautiful together on the table, but they also have a really great conversation between the two of them. So again, here we have a similar thing where I feel like the Jaus is a little bit of a softer spoken deck in comparison to the Black Lily, which is very much, again, another sharp-edged truth teller deck. It's another one that doesn't really pull any punches. It kind of just gives it to you like it is. I think the line work and the illustrative nature of both of these decks actually makes them pair really beautifully together. But beyond that, the messages that I get are really cohesive. So with the Jaus in the center here, this is kind of becomes my focal point. What do I need to focus on for the dark moon? What do I need to tap into for the dark moon time? And the Black Lily Tarot really tells me, this is why you need to do this. Like, no joke, no fooling around. This is what you need to do. Get your crap done. And that's kind of how I feel like these decks really converse with each other. They read beautifully together, but again, the Black Lily really just does say, this is what needs to be done. No fooling around. get to work. This is serious time. And so I think that these decks just work really well together for that, because we get a little bit of a softer, here's your message, you know, this is what you need to focus on. And then the Black Lily says, okay, that's great. Now let's actually get to work. And I really love that about it. Apparently I kind of love a little bit sassier decks for the dark moon. A little bit decks that really don't pull any punches and really kind of just get right to the heart of the matter. I have used these in multiple other combinations besides just the 3 card here. A lot of times I will also use them in a sort of 4 card type combo, you know, where I'll have the Black Lily kind of in the middle here and the Johannes on either side. I just find whatever spread it is that I'm doing for the dark moon, I just like to mix decks. I like the way they converse with each other. So regardless of kind of the configuration that I put them in or however many cards I use, it really is the conversation that the 2 decks have together that really does help to kind of bring those messages out and really expand upon them, that I think is really beautiful. So another pairing that I really enjoy working with for my dark moon readings is the Goddess Knowledge cards paired with the Marielle Tarot. Now this is a really powerful combination. I find that these 2 decks together really do pack a punch. And there is some really great deep insight that comes out of these decks, and it's not always necessarily easy. I don't really use the term shadow work very often, but this is kind of what I would see more as a sort of dark moon, dark energy, kind of shadowy type of work. I use the Goddess Knowledge cards as the goddess who is bringing forth the message, and the Marielle as the message that she's bringing forth. And so it does create for some very powerful readings. But like I said, they don't pull any punches and they can be quite difficult. But there's so much that can be gained within diving deep into these messages. I really love the way these work together. The artwork is also very cohesive between the 2. So real quick, I thought I would also show you what this looks like with my trimmed one, because oftentimes that is the version that I use with this particular combination. And when you remove those big black borders, the energy really does flow a lot better. And you kind of, when you take the borders away, you kind of get the, this one is the wrong way, but you kind of get that flow of energy that's kind of pulsating back and forth between these cards. It does feel, I think, to me, when I use my borderless one, and to be honest, this is actually the one that I use the most with this deck because of the fact that it is completely borderless. I have also rebacked it. This is the combo that I use the most when I work with these 2 decks together, not necessarily my bordered one, although I did want to share that with you in case you do have that one. But this combination where the decks are opened and the messages really flow, it does create for a lot of energy moving through these cards, but it also really helps you to dive deep into the messages because we're really focusing in on the transfer of energy flowing through these cards. I hope that I'm explaining how it works for me. I hope I'm doing it justice, because this is very much a powerhouse reading for me, and it's not one that I take lightly. Look how beautiful. And again, like I said, it would kind of be more of what I would call shadow work type of reading, or really I think of it as just, it's a dark moon reading, so it's diving deep into the shadow, the void consciousness, and that's where these messages emerge from. And it's a very, very powerful experience. I don't do this often because it is such a powerful experience. I do try to make sure that at least a couple times a year I'm connecting with these cards in this way, because I do get really succinct, powerful readings from it. But then I allow myself plenty of time to sit with them and reflect on them and to take in the message and not just kind of rush on to the next reading, if that makes sense. This is a combo that I think really needs time to really bring all of the, to really bring it all together, because it is quite a weighty reading. So now let's talk a little bit about the primary goddess that I work with during the dark moon. And for me, that is Hekate. Now, I do have a deck here. And to be perfectly honest, I've gone back and forth about whether or not I even want to show this deck on my channel. This is the Hekate Tarot. And it is a indie produced deck that is available on one of those print on demand places. Now, here's the thing about this deck. The quality of the artwork is not very good. I don't know if you can see the back here, but it's highly pixelated. It obviously was a little image. I've actually seen this image online, so I'm guessing they found this image online and just blew it up, and you can't really do that. It doesn't really work. First of all, online images do not work for print. They're totally different resolution. So that was kind of the first thing that I noticed when I got it. It was like, oh, that kind of hurts a little bit, but it is on the back of the card, and that's not near as big of a consideration for me. But then we move to the front of the cards, and the artwork is really hard to see. It's very blurry. Again, it almost feels like it was either blown up or somebody tried to take a picture of it and then fit it into the size specifications of a tarot deck. It's just, I hate to say it, but it's just not very well produced. Again, this is an indie deck. It was just put together by two ladies, I do believe, who are followers of Hekate, and I do believe that it was really done as a sort of devotional practice. So I'm not trying to knock it, and it is definitely a deck that I work with and I enjoy. I just want to be really clear about some of the issues that it has. If you can see here, this particular one it looks like it's been squished. It is very blurry, and there looks like there's some weird bright spot here. I'm not sure if that is supposed to be there, but it looks like where maybe like a camera flare caught it. But some of them came out beautiful, and some of them are absolutely gorgeous. Some of the cards are pretty dark, so it's hard to see what is going on. But the thing I like about this deck, it is fully a Hekate deck. And so every card does relate to Hekate. And like, here's another one that is just kind of, because it's squished, it's kind of hard to see what's going on. But the structure of this deck is really great, and I get phenomenal readings with it. So I just kind of take the artwork for what it is. You know, it's very much hand-drawn, and I think that the artwork is lovely. I just think that they needed a little bit of help in trying to probably get the files into the printer, and I think that's probably where things went a little bit awry. But I do love this deck, and I do work with this deck quite intensively, so I decided to show it. But again, like I said, I really went back and forth because it's hard for me to show a deck like this and say I love it, I use it all the time, but it has some pretty serious issues. But it's still a fantastic reader, and I do recommend it as long as you know going in that that is going to be the case with this deck, because to be perfectly honest, I was so excited when I found this deck because it was a deck fully dedicated to Hekate. I was beyond myself excited, and then I ordered it, and it came, and I was pretty disappointed by the quality of it. But that doesn't stop me from using it. It's still a foundational part of my work with Hekate. This feels kind of like having a conversation with Hekate. And so I really do enjoy working with it. I just really want to be clear about, look at this, 16 is the ego death. Love that. The structure though, the structure is fantastic. It really is an amazing deck. It's an amazing reader. It just has a few little production issues, but again, that doesn't keep me from working with it. So the deck is available on those print on demands. I want to say make playing cards, but I could be wrong. I will double check. The guidebook, however, is available separately, and you can buy this on Amazon. And this is a really brief guidebook, but it definitely gets you all the information that you need. The other thing that is important to note is this deck is not a full 78 cards. There is no court cards. So we have the majors, and then we have the ace through 10. And it does go through, the major arcana goes through Hecate's epitaphs, so that's really wonderful, and one of the reasons why I wanted this deck and the guidebook. I do find that I pretty much have to use the guidebook if I want to know what is going on in these cards. But that's okay. I do use the both of them together and they do work beautifully. It really is a beautifully created deck in the structure, the write-ups, even the artwork that was created. It just has a few production issues. So I just want to make sure I pointed that out. But that is definitely kind of my key deck for working with Hekate, and that is the Hekate Tarot. And real quick, I thought I'd just show you my Hekate Journal. This is my, says a B6 size Outlander prints from Chic Sparrow, and I'm not gonna actually show you the inside because what's written in here is very personal. I do have I have some little decorations in the pocket that I've created. I do have a Sedna card in here, and this is from the Dark Goddess Tarot. It's just like a printout that I printed out and glued onto some cardstock. I also have the Hekate card, again, just a copy of it glued on cardstock from the Dark Goddess Tarot, and the Hekate card from the Goddess Oracle, again, just a color copy. This is where I actually do the majority of my work with Hekate, is in this little insert, which I did hand make. It's just got a dashboard over the top of it to protect it. Primary work that I do with Hekate gets recorded in here. So readings, devotions, things of that nature all goes in this little insert. And then in the back here, I have just a plain journal, just plain lined journal that my Hekate research goes into. So when I learn something new about Hekate, it goes in there. And I have my little Dark Goddess charm here that I made as well. So that is my primary Hekate devotional journal, and that's definitely something that is an integral part of my practice as well. So that's a look at the decks that I primarily work with for the dark moon and along with my work with Hekate. Now there are a couple of decks in here that just kind of live in this basket that don't necessarily relate to my dark moon practice, but are decks that kind of have a similar vibe or similar energy, and decks that I do use for some sort of related work. And this one is my Nicoletta Ciccoli tarot, which I have trimmed. I do have a complete video on this deck on my channel, and that one I use primarily for inner child work. Also hanging out in here is the Mists of Avalon Oracle. I do love this deck, and I work with it primarily with my Avalonian studies, and that's something that I will hopefully do a video on at some point. And I also have my little Moon Oracle of the She by John Matthews thrown in here. Again, that goes more along with my Avalonian studies, but they kind of all have a similar sort of energy, so those are hanging out in here as well. But those are the decks that I primarily use for my Dark Moon readings and my work with Hekate. Thank you for joining me today. You'll find links for everything featured here in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.